Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Ann Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of the Laurel Historical Society. And I want to first thank my panelists for being here. Monica Sturdivant is our Assistant Director over at the Historical Society, and she was the one that came up with this topic, as well as putting together the slides and a lot of the research behind it. And we hope that you will enjoy it and get into the Christmas and the festive holiday spirit after this. And we also wanted to give a huge thanks to Rob Kluckhuhn for being with us tonight from Laurel Fuel Oil. And we're all excited to hear some of the stories and memories that he will share from his family as part of this iconic tradition in Laurel. So like I said, this webinar is being recorded, and we encourage you to put any questions or comments that you have either in the chat box or in the question and answer box below as well. So I am going to attempt to share my screen because we have some slides with you to share with you. And then if I can just pause and do that. Okay, does everyone see the intro slide? Okay, excellent. Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know. All right, excellent. So again, welcome to our presentation on Laurel's Christmas trees with myself and Monica from the Historical Society and Rob Kluckhuhn with us as well. And again, we hope that it gets you into the festive holiday spirit. And we are going to be talking about Laurel's Christmas trees, and you'll notice that there is a plural on that as well. So even though we have so many Christmas memories tied into the family tree, there are actually going to be a couple other ones that we want to talk about as well. So that's why we have a little bit of a history lesson in here about Laurel's Christmas trees. And so it probably won't come as too much of a surprise if you think about it in the timeline, that as magnificent as the Kluckhuhn family tree was, it was not the first family. It was not the first family to erect an electrified outdoor tree in Laurel. And that honor actually goes to the Musgraves family. And the Musgraves had a house at 315 Washington Avenue. And does anyone have a sense of where that is in modern day Laurel? The house is actually, unfortunately, not there anymore. But does anyone want to take a guess as to where 315 Washington Avenue is?
I would guess it's on the corner of Prince George's and Route 1, if I'm thinking of the right house.
Yeah, it's real close to there. It's actually, yeah, if you're heading down Route 1 South, it's going to be on your right-hand side. It's the gas station in that gas station area, the Sunoco, right across from the Denny's. And so that's right where 315 Washington Avenue was. And you can see that we actually have quite a few photographs of the Musgraves family in our collection, several pictures of their family. Musgraves, the father was a judge, Judge Musgraves. So we have a little bit of information about him and his family in our collection, including this very beautiful snowy picture of their house. And I'm a little bit jealous that we don't get snow like that in Laurel anymore. But you can see that it's decorated a little bit outside for Christmas as well. You can see there's like a swag of evergreens outside the front door. But what's really interesting is that in 1923, Christmas Day to be exact, in 1923, they lit what is considered the first electrified string of Christmas lights to be on an outdoor tree for Christmas in Laurel. And this was a pretty big deal. And you can see that they did a really great job, because on the left, you can see it's nicely decorated by day. There's garlands, probably made out of like a metallic tinsel. And then on the right-hand side, even though it looks like it's on fire, it is not on fire. It's just a glow in these little white Christmas lights. And we have another view of it as well here, and you can kind of see, you know, with the older photography, you can kind of see the squiggles of it, but you can kind of see the bulbs a little bit better, and you can definitely see, like, you know, they're strung together from bulb to bulb to bulb. And I wanted to go down a brief rabbit hole with you on the history of electric Christmas lights, because I think that's just so fascinating, and it really takes us all the way forward and to talk about what the Kluckhuhn family was able to do with their magnificent tree. So if we talk about Christmas lights, we have to talk about light bulbs, which takes us to, who would you guess? Thomas Edison, of course. So the first strand of electric lights was created by Edison in 1880. So going back quite a few decades, even before the Musgrave family tree. And he said he strung a strand of lights outside of his New Jersey laboratory so that they could be seen by the trains when they were passing by the nearby train station. And it wasn't until a couple years later that his partner and the man who had actually hired Edison at a different company way back in 1871, a man named Edward Johnson, strung together the first strand of lights that was intended for a Christmas tree. Edison had just strung it up on like a fence or the back area outside, and Johnson put together a string of lights intended for a Christmas tree, and he did red, white, and blue light bulbs. But it was still pretty unique, and electricity itself on this scale was still relatively new at this point in time. And in 1895, President Grover Cleveland had the first multicolored electric lights on the family Christmas tree at the White House. It wasn't the first White House Christmas tree, but they had been put up previously by previous presidents, but this was the first that had electric lights on the Christmas tree. Christmas lights at this time period, as you might imagine, were very expensive, a little bit dangerous, and they weren't readily available up until about the turn of the 20th century. So in the year 1900, just a single string of lights, which we probably see in this Musgrave's picture, cost $12 back then, which is about $300 in today's money. So you can see it was a significant investment. But GE, General Electric, realized that in order to make it safer and more available and also more affordable, which meant more people could buy their string of lights, they made little kits available. So they were already pre-wired. You didn't have to hire an electrician to put them together for you, which is what had to be done previously. And so after that, the cost of light bulbs dropped significantly. So by the time you get to 1923 in the Musgrave family, they were very much more affordable, but it was still not a common occurrence. So this was a big deal to see something like this in Laurel. And what I think is kind of coincidental, but maybe not, is in 1923, that was also the first year that the national Christmas tree was lit up and electrified with electric lights. So December 4th, 1923, President Coolidge presided over the first lighting ceremony with the national Christmas tree decked out with 3,000 electric lights. So again, many, many strands of it. And then probably the most famous Christmas tree that you think of in America around this time of year is the tree at Rockefeller Center. And the tree this year, I just have to put out a shout out to Northeastern Maryland, is coming from Elkton, Maryland. And so that's kind of my neck of the woods. So that's exciting for Cecil County and Harford County up that way. But the tree at Rockefeller Center began in 1931 when the center was still under construction. And it became a national event 2 years later in 1933. And so I wanted to give you just a quick perspective on not only the cost, but the safety factors and just, kind of the wide range of lights that you have, and the fact that, these original lights were pretty much just white. And then you start seeing a transition to the multicolored lights as well. But we do have a couple other Christmas trees in Laurel. And if you have any memories of these other Christmas trees, I encourage you to put them into the chat or the Q&A. And we're going to talk about two other ones that you probably will recognize and are maybe more familiar with than the Musgrave's family Christmas tree. So Monica, did you want to say anything about the armory and the tree lighting?
Sure. So this display is in front of the Laurel Armory, the Anderson and Murphy Community Center, located at 422 Montgomery Street. And they held their illumination the Laurel Armory illumination on December 4th. So on the left, you see the whole display, and on the right, you see a close-up of the tree that you see in the left picture on the right. And then this is the tree at the town center at Laurel. It's located at 14828 Baltimore Avenue. So it's in the circle area. I'm sure if you've been over there, you've seen this tree. And they have some upcoming events. If you haven't seen the tree yet, you can go over there and see and actually hear some Victorian carolers on December 18th and 19th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. both days. So that's something you can do after you stop at the Laurel Museum and do your shopping. We're open 12 to 4 on those 2 days as well.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Monica. So I'm curious, does anybody have any memories of going to the armory for the tree lighting ceremony? They had it this year. How long ago do people remember going to it? Is it a relatively new thing in Laurel? How long have you been taking the children out? It seems like they have a good time setting up the trees and all the decorations out front. So let me know in the chat if you have any memories of that and how long that you've been going out to see all the decorations in Laurel. But the time has come to talk about the tree that everyone has been waiting for. And I just have to say that every time we post something on social media or we do sell an ornament kind of commemorating the tree in our gift shop, it's always the biggest seller. It's always a question that we get, especially this time of the year. We hear people at the museum swap stories and about their memories of how they come and see the tree. So I just want to just say it's going to be a nice little kind of history lesson. So part of what we do with this collections conversation is that we try to look into our archives and our collections to kind of see what we can build stories around. And then we ask our guest panelists like Rob and you as the audience to kind of fill in our stories and our collections, because even though we try very hard to document the stories of Laurel's past, we know that we don't have everything. And so we really are counting on including your stories and even your photographs. So if you do have photographs or other stories or memories that you would like to share with us, please do that. We document everything that we can. So I just wanted to share with you what we have in our collection before turning it over to Rob for some of his stories and some more modern day photographs. But what you're seeing here are 2 pictures taken on Christmas Eve of 1967, and they were taken by a gentleman called John Brennan, and he was a longtime member of the Historical Society, a local historian, and his notes and photographs that we have in our collection are just a treasure trove of information. And so we were fortunate enough to have some pictures that he had taken of the trees over the years. And so these ones are taken from 1967. And so you can see they have a nice, different glow to them. You can see them from different perspectives. He also took other pictures at different times of the years. You can see it's not quite as glowing in the picture on the left. Or from afar, it really stands out as a beacon. And one of the things that John Brennan did very well, being a historian, is he always made sure to include the dates, the location, a little kind of history note on the back of the photograph. So on the back of this photograph, it says, really a magnificent sight. Mr. Kluckhuhn has had to electrify a wire fence to keep vandals from dragging off strings of lights. See story and current leader. And so what we're able to do is, because we have all of the Laurel Leader collections digitized, we're able to find the article that John Brennan referenced. And I know it's not possible to read everything at this scale, but you can see that it did indeed make an article in the News Leader at the time. This is from the December 17th version. in 1867, and the title is sadly called "The Christmas Tree That Cried," and it kind of documents both, the good and the bad, and how just wonderful it was to have it seen by the community, and how they've been doing it for at least 15 years at that point, I think. And then at the end, they kind of detail the vandalism that had occurred by saying, in their destructive path, the night visitors left only beer cans. So you can kind of see the rowdy, destructive vandalism that took place in that 1967 episode. So that's kind of the history that we were trying to set up. And now I'm going to show you some of the more modern pictures that we have. And if you have any that you have in your scrapbooks, I encourage you to send it our way. We'll definitely include it in our collection. So Rob, we have a couple pictures going up here, but I'm gonna pass it over to you and just kind of, ask for maybe some of your earliest memories of this tree, or how it came to be, kind of how it all started with your family and starting this tradition in Laurel.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Rob Kluckhuhn. I am the grandson of the original owners, Bob and Betty Kluckhuhn, and the current owner, Richard Kluckhuhn, is my father. What I remember being told, the tree was planted in the 40s by my grandfather, but that wasn't what they originally strung lights on. They strung lights on the flagpole originally and draped it to make it look like a Christmas tree. And they did that for several years before I guess they got the idea that, hey, we got a real live Christmas tree in our front yard. Let's start doing that. So my father and my grandfather started. And of course, the tree was much smaller when they started. It grew into a 65-foot mammoth that needed over 11,000 lights to illuminate it. We replaced approximately 1,000 lights a year that burned out or broke, as we were taking them down. Every year, we took the lights off the tree, tested every single light bulb, packed them in trash cans. I think we had 23 or 24 large, outside plastic trash cans that we stored all the lights in. So you can just imagine, how many lights we had.
How long did that process take? Did you have to start like in November, or did it go?
We did. Yes, we started in mid-November when the weather was good. It was always better to do it when it was not raining out or wind was blowing. But it took usually about a week and a half with a crew of men. Usually it would be about 4 or 5 people stringing it up. And originally when they started, they used long bamboo poles to reach up and string the lights over the tree and decorate it. Eventually, when it became as big as it did, it was big enough we would climb up into the very top where the star is. You can see was like a crow's nest. You could actually stand on top of the tree and you were like in a little cradle up there. And we had a pole with a pulley, and we would pull the lights from the ground all the way to the top, and then we would secure them at the very top of the tree. So it made like a web all the way around. So we would put one string of light, move over, put another string, and so on and so forth until we got the whole tree decorated. And that was only part of it. The other part was we had to balance the load. So if you can just imagine your electric panel in your house, we would have that loaded up with electrical circuits to supply electricity to all the different lights. So once we got it decorated, then we had to move lights and plug them into different areas to get the load balanced so that we weren't tripping breakers and it cutting off in the middle of the display. So that was quite a project. It would take probably a day of messing around, with the electrical circuits and getting everything balanced so that we wouldn't have a problem with it. So it was a little bit of work to do it, but it was well worth it. And the accolades we got from the community and still get, even though the tree's gone, people still rave over it. And it's really a positive feeling and helps you get into the holiday spirit, and you can't help but love Christmas, and definitely do miss that tree. Some of the things through the history in the 70s when they had the the energy crisis. My grandfather decided that year he would not light the tree because he felt if the country was in an energy crisis, he didn't feel like he should waste the energy to light a Christmas tree up. And he ended up making it on the nightly news. And I don't know exactly what year that was, but I just remember watching the TV and seeing my grandfather being interviewed by one of the nightly anchors on there. And I think that was the only year I remember that it was not lit as long as I was alive, until of course the snow damaged the tree beyond repair. So, but other than that, we did it every year. A sad note here, in 1996, somebody set fire to it, and I guess they poured gas underneath of it or on the trunk, and it was on fire about halfway up the tree. And my grandfather went out and called the fire department, and he ran out with the garden hose, and he ended up putting it out before the fire department got there. But despite all our best efforts, that took a toll on the tree. It made it much more brittle. You can just imagine an evergreen branch, you can almost bend it over itself. It just has that much give in it. But after the fire, the branches became very brittle, and when you would pull on them too hard, they would just snap off. So we deep root fed it with fertilizer. We trimmed it back. We did everything we could. We tied some of the branches up that were sagging, and still kept it decorated, I guess, for another probably 12, 13 years. And then in the winter, February of 2010, we had back-to-back blizzards. And I think that second blizzard, the weight of the snow on the branches was just too much for the branches. And as they snapped, it caused a domino effect. And basically, you can see in these pictures that are displayed now, just took it down from about 2/3 up all the way to the bottom and ripped all the branches off, which it didn't look like the Christmas tree that it once did. And ultimately we ended up taking it down. And that was the end of a beautiful chapter with the large Christmas tree in Laurel. So some other stories I could probably tell you. My brother and his girlfriend at the time climbed to the very top of the tree, and in the very top of it, he proposed marriage to her, and she accepted. So that's a little bit of a family side note. I don't know that many people knew that or not, but
I never knew that.
And there were at least one wedding under the Christmas tree when it was lit that I remember. I think a couple from West Laurel asked my grandparents if they could get married underneath of it. So there was an engagement and at least one wedding that I knew about.
Oh, wow, no, I haven't heard either of that. That's so wonderful. Yeah, so you can see a little bit, like, did people like come right up into it and look? Did they stop in their cars? Like, how were people kind of interacting with it?
A lot of people stopped their cars along the road.
Okay.
And I can just tell you the pictures don't even come close to describing what the feeling you would get. and even I knew what it was going to be, but you would drive up Montgomery Street, and Montgomery Street was dark. And as you crested that road, you just saw this ball of light that just lit up the sky and the hillside and the road. And, it just, would take your breath away. And, you definitely, if you were in your car, you would have to hit the brakes and take a look and even make a U-turn and take a second look.
I heard about the tree when I moved to Laurel, but I never got to see it. So I've only ever seen pictures of it. And so this is the most that I've ever seen of the tree. And that picture on the right, I guess that probably is what people were seeing.
Yes.
Yeah, that.
I think the picture on the left is an early version of the tree.
Okay.
Not many lights, not as big of a tree. That was probably in the 60s or early 70s. And the tree would probably grow about 2 or 3 foot a year. You can just imagine, every year it's growing another 2 or 3 foot. And, we started helping my grandfather and father decorated in the 70s as little kids, and definitely in the 80s as teenagers, and in the 90s. So, we got to see the bigger tree. And even, before the fire, we would trim the tree and shape it every year. And that was even a project to trim the tree. And one thing I just want to mention, probably the number one question asked of me is, does the fire department help decorate it? And the answer to that was no. We always decorated ourselves, just manpower, no machines, no lifts, because the hill was so steep, you couldn't put a lift or a truck or anything on it. So we climbed the tree. We used poles to help string the lights out there, and ropes and pulleys. And so we did it all with manpower and will.
That's great. Well, we have a question, Rob. Is there any plans to kind of do a tree of lights, or to kind of go back to the earlier days and before there was a tree to support it? Is there going to be any new version of it where it's made out of just lights or anything like that? Or has the tradition come to an end?
I think that tradition was started by my father and my grandfather. And, my grandfather has passed on, and I think my father put that tradition to bed. We've asked him several times, what if he thinks he was going to plant another tree, and I think he had plans a couple of times, but they just haven't materialized for whatever reason. But I definitely think that tradition lived its life, had a great story. If he started something else, it definitely would be its own story. And, I don't know if he does have any plans to do it. We can always hope.
Yeah. Well, even if not, it just, again, it lives on in everyone's memories. And that's why we, document it with pictures and the stories. So I think it's just great. So we've had a couple comments come in from the chat. So we definitely encourage you to keep writing down your memories. That'll be part of not only the presentation tonight, but also our archives as well. So I'm just gonna, go through and show some of the pictures again.
I also have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So someone says, we heard that in the later days, when the tree was tall, a separate breaker box was installed specifically to keep the tree lights going. Is that correct? Also, how much power was required to light the tree?
That is correct. So my grandfather was a master electrician. Originally, he had the power going to his house, and he had an electric panel, and he even put in a secondary panel in there, but it became so full that it would get heated up. And what he did was he would rig up a fan to blow on the electric panel to keep it cool so that it wouldn't blow the breakers and burn up wires and all. But in later years, it had its own separate meter that ran directly from the pole underground, and there was a meter box, electrical box mounted at the base of the tree. So, and it had enough power to be able to power the tree. And at one time we figured it up, if you could equate to running 3 electric furnaces full blast, that's about how much power it took to power that 11,000 lights. And they weren't the LED lights that we have now. They were the C9 lights that used a couple amps per bulb. So if you can just multiply that times 11,000 lights, you can imagine how much power that is. So, and again, each one of those bulbs was tested at the end of the year when we took the lights down, and we averaged about 1,000 light bulbs a year that we replaced that were bad or broken or whatever. So boxes and boxes, we would go directly to the warehouse to buy light bulbs, and we'd buy them by the cases.
I would think. Well, I just wanted to switch the slide to this picture. Monica took this the other day. So we were gifted from the city of Laurel. We only took one, but we had our choice of several strings of lights. Rob, do they look kind of familiar to you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Yeah.
So the story.
One of my grandfather's pet peeves is you can't put 2 red light bulbs together. You got to mix and match them. You got too many reds together. Take those out, put a blue in, put a red, put an orange in.
Oh,
And this is just one string.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
And so if you can imagine 23 full-size trash cans, outdoor trash cans that were packed with lights, and that's what it took.
Yeah, and I this from what the city told us is that you had given them to the city to use along C Street. Was that right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
then when they switched over, they had a couple of trash cans left of this, and this, like Monica said, is just one strand, and it takes up an entire tub over at the museum. So
Yeah, with these light bulbs, they did require a lot of maintenance. You know, the sockets would get worn out, and you would have to cut them out and splice them together. Of course, the bulbs would burn out or break, and you had to remove those. You know, the plugs, sometimes when you were putting them up or taking them down, the wires would rip apart. So you were constantly splicing them together with wire nuts and electrical tape. They were quite a bit of work to keep in repair and keep them working. But my grandfather, he took great pride in making sure that the tree was just so. Like I said, when we were balancing the electrical load, it would take us about a day. You know, he would move some lines around to fill some dark spots. He didn't want any dark spots in the tree. He took a lot of pride in it, and that was his gift to the community of Laurel.
So how big is the star, and do you still have it?
So the star actually was strings of light on wire, and I think there was about 200 or 300 light bulbs in the star, and there was several versions, but every year we would tweak it and try to make something a little better, a little brighter on top of it. But we would get garland and tie it. There was like heavy like fence wire that we would use to form the different points of the star. And then we would tie garland to it, and then we would tie the strings of white lights to it. And there was, I think, about 200 or 300 light bulbs just in the star alone.
Okay.
You just imagine, how big the tree was. There's 200 or 300 light bulbs there, and it just looks like a dot on the tree.
And did you have the star from the beginning? Because it looks like it maybe in some of the older ones, it wasn't there yet, or is it just, it was a different star?
It was always a work in progress.
Yeah.
Towards the later years, we had the idea what we wanted, and we would tweak that a little bit here and there. But I think over the years, it's had different stars on there, or none at all in some years. But towards the later years, we had an idea of what we wanted, and we would just reinvent it a little bit, make it a little bit better or brighter. And that was the biggest thing. We wanted it to be as bright as possible, so it stuck out.
Well, we're getting lots of good memories in the chat box. So again, I encourage you, even if it takes a couple minutes, please type them in so we can document and share it with everyone tonight. But I think what you had said is absolutely right. It was your family's, gift to Laurel. And as we can see just by all the participants tonight, it's how much of a lasting legacy that we have. And even people that didn't see the tree, like myself and Monica said, it still is part of the Laurel tradition, even though we weren't able to have the memories like so many other people have.
Thank you. Yep. And, I see some pictures, and I think a local guy I went to high school with, Brian Sherman, he's taken some I think that's a picture that he took. And that's probably one of the best pictures I've seen of the tree, not live. So it's hard to get a good picture of it to describe the awesomeness of it. And so some of these pictures, they get close, but nothing came close as seeing it in person.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's always hard to photograph Christmas lights and Christmas trees, even today with our cameras and cell phones and things like that. But to just capture, just the spirit and the kind of the essence that went around it, I don't think it's possible to do it justice, like you said.
And we have one more question.
Certainly.
Someone wants to know what happened to the trunk after it was cut down.
Well, I think some people got, I think from the Laurel Museum, I think you guys even got some pieces of it, but it was cut up, and I think whoever wanted a piece of it could come up in the yard and get it before it was hauled away. So, but I'm pretty sure somebody from the Laurel Museum took some pieces of it, and some people were going to make ornaments or carvings of the tree. I love the ornament that you guys did, the metal ornament. That's beautiful. And I bought
Thank you.
giving them to people and all. So, but I never really heard of anybody doing anything with the trunk of the tree. I know people had some ideas that they wanted to do things with it, but as far as I know, nothing ever materialized. But the ornament that you guys sell is beautiful, and it really showcased the tree very well. And I know a lot of my friends and people I've known over the years have bought it, and they display it on their tree every year.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm happy to hear you say that, because just from hearing your stories and everyone else's memories, it's such a huge part of Laurel, and to kind of capture that little bit of it and to do it so well, I think is really special. For a long time, it was our only ornament that we offered in color, and it was based off of, I think, the only like one or two photographs that we had in our collection. This was before we had the Brennan pictures. And then the rest of the pictures that you saw on the slideshow tonight were from the public Facebook group. So we don't actually, have all that many pictures. So if anyone had any other photographs or anything like that they want to share, we'll definitely be able to include that with our collection coming up. So
yeah, if anyone has video, that would be great.
I never even thought about that. Yeah, there would be.
Yeah, I, believe it or not, don't have that many pictures. Would take pictures and they just didn't do it justice. And I guess I took it for granted that the tree would always be there, so we didn't need a picture. We don't have a whole lot in our collection of the tree, but we have a lot newspaper clippings and different things. I think Facebook has has the big Christmas tree on Facebook, has its own Facebook page. So it's nice to see those, and you get some good memories from it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what are your, I guess, your Christmas traditions nowadays, now that the tree is gone? Does anyone want to share what they do? Is there a replacement? Is there anything that you do that kind of comes close? Rob, do you do anything differently now that you don't have to spring up thousands and thousands of lights every year?
Well, I moved out of Laurel a couple of years ago, and I used to decorate my house on the outside, and still do, but not quite to the extent that I did when I was a little younger and could climb up the ladders and all. So scaled that back a little bit, but nothing will ever compare to the tree and what that was. So, but we probably have melted back into what most people do, put a tree up and maybe decorate the front of the house a little bit.
Oh, well, yeah, you set the bar very high, but yeah, it's certainly much appreciated. So going back to normal, I think, is probably fun for you. Yeah. So again, I just want to go back to the Christmas lights, because this is so wonderful to have now as kind of another level in our collection. So we're not quite sure how we'll display them or what we'll do with them, but we'll make it part of our holiday open house next year. And we'll see that in some way, shape, or form, that your family's Christmas tree and the traditions are still living on. And it's great to see for me too, because when I was growing up, my dad did something similar. We had a very large pine tree in our yard, and he the same type of light bulbs, but he kept them up all year round. So didn't take them up and down, but I just love seeing that, and all just the joy and the glow of the lights. I think it's something really special. So I just wanted to move the slide just a little bit, just for a couple more announcements, but I encourage you in the couple minutes that we have left to think of any other questions that you have for Rob, or if you want to share again any of your other memories or anything like that, please put them in the chat for us. So like Monica mentioned before, and Rob just mentioned as well, we do have your own version of the Laurel's Christmas tree that you can have for your ornaments. I know that some people keep it up all year round, and we have little magnets and stands at the museum shop that you can have as well. So you can display it all year round and kind of keep that Christmas spirit going past December. But this, you can order online, and we are open for one more weekend before the end of the year. So this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 12 to 4, we will be open. So it's your last chance to do some holiday shopping. And you will be able to order online. We'll do more shipping up until Christmas. But then after that, we'll be closed in January, and then we'll open again in February with our new exhibits. So I just wanted to have a plug here. I'll put it in the chat as well, just to say now is the time just to renew or join if you are not members or haven't renewed your membership, or to consider a small donation for the program tonight that supports the work that we're doing at the Historical Society, and partnering with great people like Rob and Laurel Fuel Oil to take the time to share their stories and their memories with us tonight. I mentioned that will be closed in January, and the big reason is because that's the time that we take for maintenance of the museum, as well as to take down the current exhibits and to put up a new exhibit. So we're looking forward to opening on February 5th, 2022. For our new exhibit called What's Cooking Laurel. And it's a look at recipes, restaurants, community cooking in Laurel. I hope it's going to be a lot of fun and kind of a nice way to maybe to get out a little more and to connect or reconnect with some of the community partners after the heavy events in the last 2 years. And then if you have any questions, or if you have any photographs or videos of the tree, or any additional memories that you want to share with us, please feel free to email, and myself and Monica will add those to our collections as well. So I am just going to take a peek at the questions and the chat, and we'll just make sure that we have everything wrapped up. We had one question that said, in addition to kind of tinkering and improving things like the light strands and the stars and checking the bulbs, was there anything unique that you did each year for the tree? Was there something that you challenged yourself, I guess, to try something new, or did you kind of just, keep working on what was in place?
Well, the last thing that I remember, and I guess this was important to me, was when we lit the tree, we would have a dinner, and my children, my brother's children, which would have been the great grandchildren, were there, and they were very young. And we had one button, and so somebody would be lucky enough to hit that button, and that would light the whole tree after the dinner. And that was the initial lighting of the tree. And so the last two that did it was my daughter and my niece. They got to press the last time that the tree was lit for the first time. So that was quite special. And the kids got a kick out of it, being the one to hit the button that lights up the tree was extra special for them. So that's something that we did. But like I said, there was all different types of things that people, like I said, had weddings there and all kinds of requests over the years. Some that I don't even know, but I just know a lot of the different stories from over the years from my dad and my grandfather. But I think we displayed it, and then the community, everybody in the community had their special little things, that they would drive their out-of-town families by it, and they would have their own tradition, and that really helped make it our tradition as well. The people would come up in the yard, and we would go out and talk to them and ask them what their story was, and so that's sort of what our tradition was. Finding out, what everybody else's, why are you there, and what does it mean to you? So that was probably the most important tradition that we had, and it's a shame that we're not carrying that on for the community, but I think it did run its course, and if you were lucky enough to be in that, which I was, it's an extra special memory, and it is a little sad that it's gone and it's not here, especially this time of the year, because it meant so much to so many different people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And again, I can just, hear it with your stories and all the memories that are coming through, really how much it did mean. And I can just see it, like, it just kind of really does put you in the best of the Christmas spirit and the holiday, and just, being together with friends and family and community. So I really thank you, for all that you did and your family did for generations for so many years, and to make those memories come alive.
Well, thank you for having me on.
We did have a follow-up technical question, and this is something I never thought of when you said about turning it on. Was the button on the inside of the house or the outside, and did it ever get put onto a timer? Is this something you had to do every night?
So it was on a switch, but it was also on a timer that it would cut off. I think my grandfather had it cut off like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and on many occasions, somebody would come up in the wee hours of the morning and ask if they could turn it on for just one more minute so they could see it. But yes, it was on a timer, came on right at dusk every day, and then cut off like at 1 or 2. And it would be decorated or be lit for about 5 or 6 weeks, typically. I think till January the 7th, usually.
That's great. And we had one other question. I'm going to throw this out to the audience as well, because we don't know much about this. And one of our attendees asked, "What about the tree on Main Street?" And I know that we just have one photograph in our collection, also from John Brennan, that shows a tree at, it said 402 Main Street, so it looks like the 400 block of Main Street. So Rob, do you have any recollection of that, or anyone else in the audience? Was there?
Well, I remember, I I think in the 80s, they planted a tree there, and it's still decorated by the city to this day. It's still there. It's grown. It's pretty big. I think it's probably 30 or 40 feet tall now, and the city of Laurel decorates it. I think they used, after our tree was taken down, I think they used some of the lights to decorate it a couple years, but I think they've gone to the LEDs. They just last a lot longer, a lot less work.
Yeah.
But it's lit. If anybody wants coming down Main Street, they'll see it.
Well, that's wonderful. And again, I just love that, after the tree itself was gone, that the lights are, were repurposed and reused for other areas of Main Street and other parts of the city. And now they have a home again at the Laurel Historical Society. So I just, just love, that we can still talk about it. It's still in living memory, and it's going to be in memory for a long time to come and many generations to come. So we'll wrap it up here in just another minute or something. But Rob, I just want to thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing all your memories. And I know they're kind of bittersweet, but I think just from all the comments and just, the spirit in your voice, that we can tell that it really was something extra special for the community of Laurel. So I want to thank you for doing that. And thank you especially for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the time.
Oh, excellent. So I think that's it. So what I'll do is I will just pause to stop the recording and let that start processing. And then we'll stick around for another minute or two just in case anyone has any other questions. So give me a second to do that. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.